Hi, I'm Darren Bourke, business coach and mentor to private businesses. Today, I just wanted to talk about a number of areas that people were asking me in regard to what business owners are focusing on in these uncertain times. And rather than the obvious, which is working on cash flow, overhead review, cost reduction, headcount, etc., which is what everyone's been doing, I thought it'd be more useful to perhaps present some of the areas that people have been struggling with, and I guess the trends that I've seen across a number of businesses in varying industries. I think it's always useful to observe what other people are facing in the same economy. So to that end, I just thought I'd run through 5 things that I've really been noticing that have been areas that business owners have been wanting to turn to seek clarity around what to do with. The first one I wanted to mention was starting with yourself. So we're talking about mindset and about keeping a routine. So it sounds obvious, but it's not so obvious when we fall out of routine. Things like having a set daily routine, hopping up at the same time each day, having good sleep hygiene, having a good diet and an exercise regime. These are just basic things, but if you put them all together, they help you to get through these challenging times, okay? From all of those things, I find that it also leads to some balanced perspective, and also, as the philosophers talk about, acceptance. So if we can accept that this is happening, and that this too shall pass, we're a greater chance of staying calm and making better decisions and maintaining a better routine through these uncertain times. I think the other thing that people have been doing in terms of mindset and routine has been managing noise around COVID-19. I think it's really important to manage your dosage. I tend to keep it to a certain amount of radio news and the 7 o'clock ABC News, for example. And if I want to look up something else, I do, but I don't tend to bombard myself with multiple media sources, particularly tabloid media. It just doesn't appear to be helpful. And the other thing that people have been doing is they've been keeping in touch with the people around them. And that's just not family and friends. It's other people in business and their peers and their colleagues and their network. So I think reaching out and, keeping in touch with people and checking in on people's general welfare has been prolific. And I think it's a great quality in, I guess, the individuals that most of us get to mix with, that they are of such a quality that they are always looking out and seeing how others are doing and what they might be able to do to help. So all of that encapsulates the first thing around mindset and routine. The second thing that I've noticed that people have been talking about a lot and struggling with has been, I guess, virtual management. So we've gone from a situation where we manage customers and we manage our team in person, face to face, and now we've had to pivot and move to a virtual medium. So I guess while a lot of Zoom meetings are taking place around Australia and people are communicating through that and have adopted that, I think the challenge has been how to communicate, particularly with our employees who are used to seeing us every day, and finding the right frequency and the right medium in which to manage the team. And this goes both for the employer managing the employees, and also the employees, of course, adjusting to perceiving the level of virtual communication that their employer wants. So it's a two-way street. So we've been spending a lot of time in discussions with owners talking about how often we should be virtually meeting with them. In some cases, there's a town hall meeting every Monday. In other cases, we've got silos that managers are able to check in with people virtually on a daily or bi-daily or bi-weekly basis, depending on the need, and kind of setting really clear expectations around what is expected to be completed, ideally, or what projects are to be worked on through this period. And that does a couple of things. That manages expectations with the employee, and it helps employee engagement and empowerment to be clear in what the expectations are and to take that and run with it. And it also gives the employer the chance to set the expectations up front rather than ambushing people after the event when it's too late, saying, why didn't you complete this? Or I thought you would have done this. So there's a frequency and a content of messaging around that. So it's really important that you have I call it a weekly cycle that you cycle through that kind of like starts at the start of the week and has a clear ending at the end of the week, and then you check in again at the start of the next week and review the week in the review mirror, and we review the week ahead. And that's just a good way of keeping productivity flowing and good constructive working relationships. The third area that this sort of rolls into nicely is messaging. I had a lot of discussion around, how often and what sort of messaging should be done to our internal team and our external team. If we start our internal team that we just came off with employees, with our internal team, we need to give them an explanation of the state of play. They're not to know. So we need to explain what is happening in our business, how are we going? What is the outlook? And it may not always be good news, but at least if you report the news as best you can and give them some sort of surety over what the immediate future looks like, that helps with their mindset and their engagement and their accountability. With your customers, messaging becomes really important, and I'll get to that in a minute when I talk about pivoting from BD to communications. And then also with our messaging, we need to, speak with our customers if there are issues with terms, if there are issues with transparency around cash flow and things like that. Don't leave it too late. Be proactive in having those communications in a very calm and measured way. The other thing is that we need to get an understanding from them of what projected demand will be like. Okay, so they're the sorts of things that you should be speaking to your good customers and your regular customers about, so that you can plan for what their needs are. And that's a good framework for explaining them why you need to know to deliver on their expectations. And then, of course, we've got our suppliers. We need to communicate with our suppliers if there are problems with cash flow. If there is going to be a huge reduction, a known reduction in future purchasing, I think it always creates better relationships by being open in communicating that in advance where possible, and understanding that we want our suppliers with us when we come out the other side. And so really being respectful and as open, as transparent as we can in these times, I think builds good relationships for the future beyond this. The fourth area I touched on with customers was pivoting from business development to communications. So what that means is that I think a lot of people at the moment understand that a lot of sales orientated and business development type activities in most industries, not all, can be perceived as being a bit on the nose. So in the absence of stopping all of that and doing nothing, I think it's really, really critical that we just pivot slightly and think about how do we communicate in adding value. I've always had the saying, helping, not selling. And I think if you share valuable content and share resources and honestly try and help people, your skills and abilities will be demonstrated through what you share and through the people that you introduce. But more so, it just shows that you are present and it keeps you top of mind if they are thinking about an opportunity in your area of product or service. So thinking about communications and rather than business development. And to that end, the final thing on that pivoting to communications, you then want to think about the frequency and the content that you put out. I've been talking about three types of flavours. There's the bombardment of COVID update, which becomes a little bit overwhelming and you become a bit deaf to that. And then there are the businesses that have gone completely silent, who aren't communicating at all, which I wouldn't recommend. And then you've got what most businesses try to do is, where is that middle spot where we have a reasonably frequent series of phone calls, emails, online content, social, going out to people, and what is that content? So we actually, rather than just sort of like making stuff up as we go along, we should be thinking about those different mediums and what is the content that we will share. And then within the organisation, spreading that responsibility around for people to create different types of content mediums to be included in that calendar of communications. And finally, I've discussed this with a number of businesses. While productivity isn't as high and demands aren't as high on our team or ourselves, there's a real opportunity to create assets for the future, to build some collateral around our internal assets. So that might be our social posts, our blog, our writing, our white papers, our any content creation that we can do, or it could be productive, non-chargeable time where we create some things of use for the internal workings of the business, or something that could be useful for our clients. It's really all about where we can't necessarily charge for our products or services, feeling like we can create some assets, some collateral that can be used by the business for the future. And so in the absence of just being dormant and boredom setting in, there's opportunities just to get our team and ourselves to think about what could I be doing in the background to work on my business to create that internal collateral and those internal assets that we can use for the future. And so I think those are 5 things that you can really think about doing in these uncertain times, in these difficult times, that will allow you to focus on things that actually can make a difference and things that people will remember you for beyond this. So I welcome you to explore those things, and thanks for listening.